Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy by TrustArc. Please welcome our hosts, Paul Breitbarth and Kay Royal.
This week, 5 years ago, on 25 May 2016, a new European omnibus data protection law saw the light. 5 years in which the world learned about the importance of privacy and data protection, individuals understood they can fight for their data rights, and companies worked hard to improve their accountability and compliance programs. 5 years. And at the same time, 3 years of GDPR enforcement by the supervisory authorities since the 25th of May 2018. For the coming days, expect the stories to evolve around the number and amount of fines that have been imposed, as well as the supposed lack of enforcement. True, things are not perfect yet, not on the organizational compliance side, nor on the supervision side, but we surely have made a lot of progress, and that alone is reason to celebrate. And that is exactly what Kay and I will do during this week's episode. We also look at what we can expect from developments in the US, and much more. This is our Week in Privacy. My name is Paul Breitbarth.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So, Paul, I have to admit, as I always do, that I love it when you and I have the shows where we just get to sit here and shoot privacy bull.
Yeah, and there are quite some topics to discuss this week. And let's not forget, we are releasing this episode on the 25th of May, or maybe it's just the 26th, no matter where you are.
Why does that name sound so familiar, that date?
It is. It is Happy GDPR Day today.
Yes, yes, yes.
And we'll talk more about 5 years of GDPR.
Okay, I do have a unexpected question,
Bring it
but
on.
it's very short and simple. Water, ice, or steam?
Ooh, probably this time of year I would still say water.
Still say water?
I drink a lot of water, and it's still not warm enough here for ice. Steam is nice, but it's not cold enough anymore for steam. So yes, I'll stick to water for now. That sounds like the May area. Yeah.
Mine is generally water. I try to drink about a gallon of water a day. And
what's that in Eurospeak?
I don't drink enough water on the 4 liters?
That's a lot. We are recommended to drink about 1.5 liters, so 4 is an awful lot more.
I think a gallon's like 4 liters. I'm picturing it. Now you're going to make me look it up. Liters to gallons. This is ridiculous. So yeah, about 4 liters.
That's an awful lot.
It is. And not only I drink it not just because I'm in Arizona, but also related to at least one of my autoimmunes that I don't process water. So I have to drink a ton of it. And you can hear it on the podcast. If I start smacking when I don't have enough water, oh, those clicks are horrible to get out.
Well, if we do the editing all right, people don't hear it on the podcast, but because we try to cut it out. We don't always succeed.
Right, I try my best to cut those out.
We don't always have the time to get it done, because other work also needs to get done. We can't spend the whole week on this podcast, unfortunately.
We're privacy attorneys. What the heck are we supposed to do except work, right? There's so much going on. But seriously, let's take a look back in history. I do want to say happy anniversary to the GDPR. I mean, it has probably been the most talked about, newsworthy, impactful, influential law that has ever been passed.
Yes, I would say so. And no matter where you are in the world, there will be people that are familiar with those 4 letters, GDPR, and would understand what you would be talking about. It is certainly not everybody, and it is certainly not everywhere, but yes, people are familiar with the GDPR around the world and have an understanding that it has something to do with privacy or data protection and how it all would work. Probably most of them would not know all the details.
Right. And it is, interesting. I put out a little bit of a call on social media at the last minute, so I'll probably get more comments in the next week. But asking privacy people that I know, what are their thoughts on the GDPR? And I was kind of hoping I'd planned enough in advance to get them to send me kind of a little sound bite, but I'm not the strongest on planning. And we have one from Dr. Gabriella, who has been on our show a few times that we love. And she said her strongest thoughts these days about the GDPR related to how best to explain it's fully applicable to any AI trained on personal data or used to make automated decisions about individuals or to infer data about individuals. Some sort of amnesia or ignorance seems to have reached a part of the privacy data protection community. So for its 3 years anniversary from becoming effective, I wish the community would start seeing the strength in regulating AI and automated decision making. And I agree.
Yes, I fully agree as well. And there is absolutely no hard need to have additional AI legislation specifically dealing with AI, at least not when it is related to personal data. And you can imagine that there are situations where you would use artificial intelligence for non-personal data. That is something that you could regulate, but then maybe the consequences would not be as detrimental than using artificial intelligence in combination with people's personal data.
Yeah, she is absolutely right. For some reason, there is a blind spot. For some reason, people aren't comprehending that the GDPR applies to personal data, period.
Well, I think to some extent, people also want to make sure that the political debates and maybe even the legislative debates are also dealing with the topics that everybody is talking about at the moment. And everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. So we need more rules for artificial intelligence. We need to legislate because this is the topic of the day, like we had a few years ago with big data.
Right. And yeah, again, and I think we mentioned this before, legislation seems to be driven mainly on passion. Mm-hmm. Something traumatic happened, therefore we need to legislate against it. One of the first ones that ever stood out to me was the Video Rental Privacy Act that you have here in the U.S., and it was because there was a breach of who rented video movies, and one of the congressmen had been renting X-rated tapes, and that was made public. And so
he didn't like that?
The Video Rental Privacy Act, and he didn't like that. So, it's reactionary. So often it's reactionary, and what people don't get is the GDPR was not reactionary.
No, it was not. Well,
it was proactive. I mean, it was reactive in some extent, but it really was thinking ahead. It was not reacting to specific things that happen that we must legislate this very specific little detail. We're going to control all the data.
Yes, I think that's true. GDPR was reactive in a sense because it is a reaction to the internet era and the widespread development of large online companies processing personal data and having the use of personal data as their business model. Because let's not forget, right, Europe had preceding legislation that was also omnibus legislation like the GDPR, which dates back to 1995, the so-called 1995 Data Protection Directive.
But trying to convince most Americans that there was already an omnibus European private, well, it wasn't an omnibus, but there was already a privacy directive, an omnibus directive.
Yeah, it was an omnibus directive, because if you look at the 1995 directive, most of the topics that you see there are still part of the GDPR, often in almost exactly the same wording. The only thing that GDPR has done is update those rules and those regulations to the 21st century and to the internet era. And there were three...
Or it tried.
And there were three goals for the GDPR, and that was empowerment of the data subject, more responsibility and more accountability for businesses processing personal data, or should say organizations processing personal data, because governments are also covered. And third, stronger supervisory authorities with better enforcement powers. And that is also one of the reasons why we have a regulation now.
Yes, and they have definitely used those enforcement powers. I was looking up statistics from it. Oh, you don't think they've used it as much as they could have?
No, I'm not completely satisfied yet. I think that the supervisory authorities could maybe have done slightly more. I'm not saying that they are not enforcing the law. I know those critics are there as well. I'm not saying that, but I would like to see more of their enforcement action. I know that a lot of cases by the DPAs are decided upon with alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, with letters or phone calls, with smaller investigations that don't lead to a large fine. And I think that DPAs could do much more to also publish that kind of information, and not just in summary in their annual report, but also showing us the actual investigation reports. And that doesn't have to be a full-blown report that we would see for the large-scale investigations with the naming and shaming taking place, but I would like to see more of the detail, because it is helpful to understand how they look at the legislation and how they look at the practical application of the law. And I don't think we see that enough.
Right. And I was pulling up some of the details on the enforcements. And so in 2020, there were 318 fines. And that was out of 471 fines overall. So that tells you that for half of 2018 and for 2019, there were 150, 160 fines around there. And we're already starting to see some in 2021. But in 2020, we really did start seeing some major movement in fines, like Keneal fining on big tech investments, Amazon, Google, different things like that. So you had those, they were going up in fines, which was really interesting. The high fine amount tends to make an impact on people. So there were issue fines, especially against high tech and telecommunications. The Garant issued a fine of 16.7. So you had some of those. And then I remember from some of the other data that I looked at that they also issued fines against individuals. So there were a couple of individuals that had also received fines that we talked about before, I believe. If I recall correctly, one was on photos or videos that had license tags in them, and another was on a soccer coach that took pictures of the players in the showers or something like that. I'll have to go back and look that up. So no one is exempt from being fined.
No, absolutely not.
I don't know.
I actually,
and I don't know that we have seen one that has been at the max of 4% yet, though.
I believe that the Norwegian fine for Grindr was actually at the maximum or close to the maximum. That was a 10 million euro fine, 100 million kroner, and I believe that was close to the maximum. But true, I mean, on the other hand, for me, it is not all about the big fines. In the end, it is about compliance. And fines make very nice media reports, but, you know, in the end, it is not about the money, because if something has already gone wrong, the harm is for many people irreparable. So a fine does not offer a good solution there. Let me give you...
That is true. And just to give you the summary, as of May 2021, the total of fines is 283 million.
That we are aware of,
and
yes.
600... that we are aware of. I guess these have been finalized, and 625 fines total.
Yeah.
So we have been very active in 2021.
I would say so, but I mean, we still don't know all the fines because many are released also with a bit of a delay. But true, I mean, there have been quite a number of fines that have been issued. The amounts are pretty big, but it is not the final solution towards compliance. It may help. Others pay more attention or pay better attention, but
it makes headlines.
And that is certainly the case. Let me give you an example from the Netherlands from just last week. I think everybody who has used email has made the mistake of sending a group email with everybody in CC instead of BCC. I'm sure I have, and guess that you have too, Kate.
Yes, I'm sure I have.
So officially, that is a data breach. And depending on what happens, that data breach needs to be reported to the supervisory authority and also to the individuals. Well, this is also what happened to one of the political parties in a regional parliament here in the Netherlands.
Ooh, of course, a political party.
Exactly, a political party, which means that you are dealing with special categories of data. You are revealing people who are supporters, in this case, that it was an email to the supporters of that party, but with everybody in CC instead of BCC. So you were revealing data about a political conviction to all of the others in that email thread. And that is not something that should happen. And a political party failed to notify the Data Protection Authority that they had this data breach. Probably they were not even aware that it was a data breach, but it was. And they should have reported it because they were dealing with sensitive data. And it was not just 2 or 3 people. I believe it was over 100 people. So this was a serious breach. In principle, under the Dutch fining guidelines, that should have led to a fine of €525,000. And only because of the financial resources, the limited financial resources of this regional branch of the political party, the DPA has reduced the fine to €7,500. So the amount of the fine in the end is not really important. It is the investigatory report below it, underneath it, that is much more important for everybody to be aware of, because causing such a data breach and not reporting it is something serious to take into account. So that is a serious offense.
It is. That's what one of our other comments on the GDPR is to look at what the domestic enforcement is across the public sector organizations and enforcement against non-EU companies. And so would a political party fall under a public sector organization? Or would it be considered just a non-profit private?
In this case, I think it would be a non-profit private sector kind of organization. I don't believe that they would be seen as a government organization.
Okay. So we have those as well. And then, of course, the recent one that was against the company, I'd have to look it up. You might have it on the tip of your tongue, but the company that was fined because they didn't realize they were subject to GDPR.
Oh, yes, that Discus. This is a fine from Norway.
So no excuse.
Of €2.5 million converted from kroner. And yes, Discus was offering their plugin, which is some sort of response system that you can build into a website so that people can respond to news reports and discuss on your website. And the Norwegian public broadcasting system used Discus for their website. But there was also all kinds of tracking and marketing included in that platform. And there were complaints about that to the DPA. So the DPA investigated and found out that indeed Norway was not included in the privacy notice of Discus for the GDPR, because apparently Discus did not realize that GDPR also applies in the European Economic Area countries, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland, and not just in the EU 27 countries. So they failed with the legal basis for their processing for marketing because they relied on legitimate interest, which is not allowed for the first collection of marketing-related data. They did not provide proper notice to individuals because they did not tell them that they had rights under the GDPR, and they had insufficient accountability mechanisms, again, because they were not aware that GDPR was applicable to them.
Yeah. And you want to sit here and go, what? Were you living under a rock?
Well, it is a bit surprising. And I mean,
I don't know.
This is a large tech company, and you would assume that companies like that have lawyers that take a look at what is the applicable law in the countries where we have operations. I mean,
right.
Sure, it would be great if they would just use a platform like TrustArcs to find out what laws apply to them in the privacy sphere. But even without a platform, I mean, it's just, you just look it up. You ask your local council, what are the laws that we need to comply with?
Anyone in technology or telecommunications you think would naturally understand that this applies to them, given the extent of it. But, in looking at, and you hate to focus on fines, but looking at fines and enforcement trends tells you what you need to do for the future. So you look to the past to see what your future should look like. And the largest violations that people usually have, and this should tell companies, go out and look, do you have these things done right? Insufficient legal basis for data processing is the biggest one. Insufficient technical and organizational measures for security is the second. So 239 fines for the first one, 142 for the second. non-compliance with the principles, and then insufficient fulfillment of data rights, insufficient fulfillment of information obligations, insufficient fulfillment of data breach notification obligations. Now, true, we're only down to like 18 fines for that right now, but think about it. That means someone didn't tell the authorities what was going on. Lack of appointment of a data protection officer, and then insufficient cooperation with the supervisory authorities and insufficient data processing agreement. So those are the things companies need to pay attention to. Do you have these things in place? The GDPR may be long, but frankly, it's not really complex. It's pretty clear in what it lays out and tells you what to do. And if for some reason a company doesn't understand what it is they're supposed to be doing, there are hundreds of thousands of privacy people out there now who would be happy to tell you what your obligations are.
Absolutely.
Some of them may have no experience in privacy.
We can recommend quite a few, actually, if companies are in need. You just mentioned the whole list of top complaints that are made about companies being non-compliant. And one of the ones that struck me, also bearing in mind a recent enforcement case, is the disrespect for individual rights. And there is a website called locatefamily.com, and that website publishes people's location data. So their names, their address, their phone numbers, often without the people being aware. The Dutch data...
That just sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is a recipe for disaster, and disaster they got. The Dutch DPA got a series of complaints about this website. Also, other DPAs got a series of complaints about this website. And there was no establishment that could be found for locatefamily.com anywhere in the European Union. The Dutch DPA decided to investigate. They consulted with the other data protection authorities within the Data Protection Board. Do you know anything about this company? Have you heard anything? Have you received complaints? So the Dutch DPA in the end led an investigation on behalf of 10 European DPAs. And by looking in more detail at the website of Locate Family, they also found out, or at least they had the suspicion, that the website might actually be based in Canada. So the Dutch DPA reached out to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada to see whether they would be interested to cooperate in this cross-border investigation as well. You may recall from the Dutch-Canadian WhatsApp investigation in 2013 that there was already a memorandum of understanding in place between the two DPAs on how to cooperate in a cross-border case like this. So the MOU was taken off the shelf and they have used it again. So the Canadian OPC was involved in this investigation against locatefamily.com as well. And on both ends of the Atlantic, it was found that the company is breaching the law by not properly informing individuals about the data that is processed, by not being sufficiently transparent about the data that they process and where it is coming from, about being non-responsive on individuals or to individuals that want their information taken down. So the Dutch DPA last week announced that they have imposed a fine of 525,000 euros. Again, that same base amount for a serious fine against Locate Family. However, since it is still not clear where the company is based, it will be pretty hard for the time being to actually also collect the fine. There is a second problem because, as you will probably be aware from the GDPR, if you do not have an establishment in the European Union, but you do offer goods and services, you will need to appoint a representative. We have a whole episode about that in our first season. And also that is something that Locate Family had not done. So they have not only received their fine of 525,000 euros, they have also received a compliance order in combination with a conditional fine on top of the 525, which is another maximum of 120,000 euros, 20,000 euro per 2 weeks that they are non-compliant for not appointing an EU representative. The company still claims that they are not subject to GDPR, that they are not offering goods and services, but they are also, and because they are saying we are not covered by GDPR, they are also unwilling to cooperate with the DPA and provide any further details, let alone any details on where they are located or how they can actually be subpoenaed or how the fine can actually be delivered or the fine decision can be delivered to their door. So this is to be continued. This is an interesting case because It is all about the question, what will you do when you have a data controller that doesn't want to be found?
That's going to be really interesting. And that might be the first one where we can test the premise of what happens if a non-EU company does not appoint a representative, because the appointing of the representative in large part is to make sure there is jurisdiction. I mean, I know it's also the contact person for the authorities, all that good stuff. Yeah, but cut down to the fundamentals, it's so they have jurisdiction over you. And that's going to be really interesting. We've asked what happens if, a non-EU company says, you don't have jurisdiction over me and I didn't appoint a representative, so you still don't have jurisdiction over me.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I think it's a matter of time before somebody will be able to figure out where this company is actually based. And I very well imagine...
Oh, somebody will.
Somebody will. And I can very well imagine if they are, for example, US-based, that the case will end up with the Federal Trade Commission for unfair and deceptive practices. Because also with the FTC...
Oh, absolutely.
There are memoranda of understanding between the European DPAs and the Federal Trade Commission. So that could also be a way out.
And I guarantee you there's some people out there that specialize in finding out information that you don't want to be found that could probably find them. It's probably a few that listen to our podcast that have those skills.
Who knows? Who knows?
They are not skills I have.
That would be that would be really great. So yeah, if anybody has further information on the location of locatefamily.com, please inform the Dutch Data Protection Authority, because they would be very interested to learn.
Absolutely. Oh, that is awesome. I love it.
So what other comments did you get from our friends online, Kay? Anything else any other reflections on the GDPR?
There was a comment on looking into the non-EU enterprises such as Locate Family. There was Sean, that was from Tim Bell, who is a representative. You can appoint him anywhere over the EU or in the UK as a representative. Very, very knowledgeable gentleman there with a ton of people working with him. So Sean, who we just had on, said, what's the secret ingredient that popularized GDPR for the general public, especially compared to its predecessors or equivalents in other jurisdictions? Do we have the media industry to thank?
Interesting. I'm not sure.
So what made GDPR so fascinating? I think a lot of it was the media. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it was the fines, which is what a response back to it was. It's got to be the fines.
Scare tactics, basically.
Yeah. They were fear-mongering. So it was really interesting that. But I think it is right. I think it's a combination of public awareness and the fear-mongering of the fines and the extent of the GDPR, the extraterritoriality. Listen at me getting that word out without stumbling over it now. And getting all that out. So it's interesting that it has it. But I think part of it is a combination of what we've seen come together across the world. We've seen technology improving. We've seen the prevalence of Internet of Things and AI and automated decision making. We've seen financial hardships over the pandemic and changing work environments. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's been going on for over a year now, people. So we have that. So I think it's basically, what do you call it? A series of unfortunate events.
Lemony Snickets, right?
That probably led to it being more prevalent. Yeah, exactly. And another comment was growing pains.
Yes, those I understand.
Definitely growing pains. But you look at here in the... Yeah, right? You look here in the United States, and Virginia's law was modeled a lot after GDPR. I mean, it has the definitions of processors and controllers, the definitions of sensitive information. I compared GDPR with CCPA and the Virginia CDPA on what definitions of sensitive information were, just because I was curious, because, that's what I like to do. And let me pull that up real quick. And as a matter of fact, I think this is coming out with probably with a white paper or a blog entry or something, hopefully by the time we publish. So if we were to look at the definitions of sensitive information compared between Virginia, the CPRA, because the CCPA in California doesn't have a definition, but the CPRA, which takes effect at the same time Virginia does have a definition of sensitive information. And then GDPR. So all three include racial or ethnic origin. All three include religious beliefs. CPRA and GDPR have philosophical beliefs. GDPR is the only one with political opinions. We've talked about that here in the United States. So Political opinions will never make its way into sensitive data. Union membership is both CPRA and GDPR.
And I would say unions
Mental or physical health is in all three, although Virginia specifically says diagnosis. So not all information, but diagnosis.
But the rest would be HIPAA
Sexual
already.
orientation is under all three, but CPRA and GDPR both include sex life and sexual orientation. The Virginia includes citizenship or immigration status. Genetic data is under all three, although Virginia and GDPR specify for purposes of identifying a person. CPRA protects genetic data in general, although you could probably roll genetic data underneath health data. So biometric data to identify a person is all three. Personal data from a known child is under Virginia. And of course, in GDPR, it's under Article 8. So not specifically special categories of data, but there is special treatment for certain data when it comes to what information processing sites or something like that online. I forget the terminology exactly. Precise geolocation is under Virginia and California. Government issued ID numbers, account access credentials such as your username or your account number with a security question, a passcode, password, and the content of messages unless the business is the recipient. Those last three categories are specifically under CPRA. So it's interesting when you look at how Virginia has adopted a lot of the GDPR language, and CPRA brings in a lot of the concepts if it doesn't bring in the same language. So it's really interesting how we're being influenced by European law, but I like that we're being influenced. I don't care that it's by European law, but I like that we're trying to bring some consistency to the laws that companies need to comply with, because the biggest way to not comply is to have so many different things that you can't comply with all of them. So in addition to Virginia, which we do pass, I think there are some state laws that are still alive and out there. Texas Senate Bill 15 is technically still alive. So it is a privacy bill in Texas, and it has passed the Senate and it's in the House already. It has been assigned to committee, and it has been read once. Now, Texas legislature is over at the end of May. So we've got, 12 more days in order for them to make it out of committee, to be read twice on the floor, and to be passed. So is there time? Sure, there's time. It could happen. I'm not going to hold my breath on this one, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And then there's a couple of others that might still be alive. I was looking up to see which ones those are. So let me look real quick. So what it says that we have, and this was last updated May 10th. There's probably a more recent one here, but it has that there are still some laws that are here in play. Not very many of them. But it technically says that there's 14 or 15 that are still in play here. So we'll see if there are any that still make it out. Just as many of them have already failed. Legislature has closed for the year. And I think at least a couple of them are in 2-year Congresses. So they might actually still be alive technically and carry over. I'd have to look into more detail for that. But, we were looking in the beginning as to what states would actually pass laws and didn't really have a lot that came through. Our hopes were up a little bit. I have to admit, we had some hopes. Wasn't really going to happen, but we are curious as to see what happens here. Yeah, we've talked about the GDPR, the 3-year anniversary, the enforcement trends, how that's impacting other countries and other companies outside the EU as well as in the EU, some key things that companies need to look for. Talked a little bit about Virginia in comparison with GDPR and CPRA, namely just overarching concepts that they might have. The CPRA in Virginia won't go into effect until 2023, so we won't see a lot of movement on those until then. I don't believe Virginia has a 1-year look back. CPRA, of course, is based on CCPA that's active now. So without a lot more movement in the states between, this season, which seems to have been, a bomb, fell flat on its face. We'll see what comes next season. Of course, there's still federal. I don't think anybody's really holding their breath for federal. Still got the shield.
Not for this year.
Right? Still got the shield out there and still being worked on. Still got standard contractual clauses that are supposed to be coming.
They are still supposed to be coming, and actually they were what is called in comitology yesterday, which means that the European Commission consulted with the EU member states, so that was mid-May.
Okay.
On May, what was it yesterday? On May 17th, they were discussed between the European Commission and the member states. So I would say that is a sign that they are close to being finalized.
Awesome, because, someone asked me, said, well, I thought y'all said a couple of weeks. I said, well, a couple of weeks to Europeans does not mean 14 days.
No, and I mean, by the summer could also mean in September or October. So that is also what we've seen in the past with many European decisions. If they say around the summer, it could easily be just before Christmas.
Yeah, it's kind of like my teenage daughter saying, I'll be home 11-ish.
Yes, which could also be 4 a.m., right?
Exactly. Ish is a lot of things. Yeah. So we have that.
This is a couple of weeks-ish, but it is coming. And especially for the SCCs, I'm less confident that we will see any Privacy Shield 2.0 or whatever it will be called anytime soon. For the UK, the situation will, of course, be interesting because there the consultation between the European Commission and the member states will be later this week. And that decision, of course, needs to be taken by the end of June in order for the UK not to become a fully third country from a data protection perspective.
Right.
And we are still waiting for the European Data Protection Board to provide us with an update on their recommendations. So they have a meeting later this week on the 19th. And they have not released the agenda yet, so maybe it is also on their schedule in the coming days.
Oh, that would be nice. I just wonder if, all other legislative bodies or anyone that's trying to get anything done in the public eye, they just feel a lot of stress, a lot of eyes on them asking for things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true.
And that's got to be, we're all exhausted, period. When it comes to this past year, we were just joking with someone else. Anytime someone says last year, they don't mean 2020. They mean whatever was before then, 2019 and before. Last year just seems to be a big blur. Thursdays are a big blursdays now. So I just wonder if they feel a lot of stress, if they feel, tension or pressure on them, because a lot of eyes are on them, waiting on them to come out with a lot of decisions and guidance and issuances and, just a lot of people watching. And that's gotta feel pretty stressful, which probably isn't nice right now.
No, I think that is certainly true. So yeah, we'll have to wait. There will be lot more. We'll just have to wait. There will be a lot more news in the coming weeks, and we'll continue to update our listeners on everything that is happening in the privacy community. We have also some nice new guests lined up for the coming weeks.
Oh, we do. We really do. It's not
those.
like we're running out of things to talk about.
No, and I mean, privacy has never been boring, but there are so many people that we still want to talk to. So yes, before the summer, there will be a lot more nice episodes. For now, I would like to thank all our listeners for joining us for another episode of Serious Privacy. If you like us, please do tell your friends and family about us and rate and review us in your favorite podcast application. And if you want to be a guest on the show or have recommendations for us, please reach out to seriousprivacy@trustarc.com or via Twitter at @podcastprivacy. You can find Kay on Twitter as Heart of Privacy and myself as Europol B. Thank you for listening, and until our next episode, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMD research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows, to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore ARC at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.